"What's your name?" a person asked curiously, and the response came with a tranquil but assertive voice. "Well, my name is Jim, but most people call me Jim." It was a line that to the naked eye appeared dull and even mundane. But when put into the madness and brilliance of Blazing Saddles, it had the strange heft of absurdity that characterized the movie. Blazing Saddles is 3 words: dare to defy rules. Released in 1974, it wasn't merely another comedy that made people laugh. It was a box office explosion and cultural earthquake that transformed what comedy could do. The movie was bold, courageous, and irreverently satirical, testing every limit of taste, politics, and artistic freedom. Few might have guessed the effect it would have, and fewer still really knew the madness and intrigue that existed behind the camera. With all its slick sententiousness on screen, production of Blazing Saddles was less than smooth. Hair-raising incidents teetered on the brink of bringing production crashing down before it had even begun. Jarring surprises from Mel Brooks regularly took risks to the extreme, and unanticipated meddling by Gene Wilder saved the movie more than once. From actors fainting on set to executives getting in a flap about offending content, Blazing Saddles behind the scenes is a tale as crazy as the movie itself, and one startling revelation can alter the way you ever watch the film again. Disaster struck it did. Even before Gene Wilder stepped foot into the role that would make him legendary, the production was hit with a horrendous incident that could have derailed everything before even the first camera click. The Waco Kid role had initially been offered to Gig Young, who was a Hollywood veteran and Academy Award winner. In theory, he was ideal for the part, a man with the gravitas, reputation, and weathered looks of a veteran gunslinger whose tired history belonged on the character like a glove. But no sooner had the cameras rolled than calamity. On the first day of shooting, Young burst out in a cold sweat, his speech stumbling in a way that bewildered the crew. Initially, everyone believed it was a part of his act, maybe an artistic interpretation of the character. But soon enough, the truth came out. Gig Young was experiencing bad alcohol withdrawal. By mid-morning, he fell down. The camera stopped rolling, production stopped, and panic erupted on the set. Mel Brooks and his team did not have time for readings and negotiations. The film, controversial and delicate as it already was, could not afford to waste time. Brooks had no choice. He grabbed the phone and called Gene Wilder. The phone call was brief, just a few words, but it would become memorable in the history of film. Wilder didn't inquire about the character, the screenplay, or the pay. He just said, "I will come." In less than a day, Wilder was on location. With no preparation, no rehearsal, and not even a moment to accommodate, he slipped into the Waco Kid role as if he had been born to it. What resulted was nothing less than miraculous. Wilder did more than salvage the film from disaster. He took the character and made him a symbol of understated excellence and satire that sustained the entire picture. But Wilder insisted on one thing before signing up the Waco Kid. His character would not be played for comedy. In a movie filled to bursting with lethal gags, outlandish situations, and hyperbolic satire, Wilder insisted on doing the exact opposite. His Waco Kid would be taciturn, melancholy, and saturated in a tired kind of tragedy. Mel Brooks himself would later refer to the Waco Kid as the backbone of the whole film, and it was no overstatement. While baddies like Hedley Lamar and other characters took absurdity to its limits, the Waco Kid was the eye of the hurricane, unmoving, unruffled, haunting. Wilder employed silence, pauses, and somberness as his comedy weapons. He knew something few others knew. Contrast is the most biting of comedy tools. To turn chaos into comedy, you require calm in its vicinity. To render absurdity more potent, you require truth standing motionless in its shade. That was what Wilder provided to the film. His weary eyes, shuddering hands, and flat, affectless tone transformed what would otherwise have been a disposable sidekick character into a figure that was hilarious as well as profoundly tragic. When the Waco Kid introduced himself languidly from a jail cell bunk, half groggy and half awake, speaking, Wilder did not milk it for a cheap laugh. Rather, he lent the line a tragic dignity, and what was left was a sort of haunting humor that resonated with audiences long after. It was a gamble of risk. Normally, a retiring type would disappear in the din of more boisterous performances, but Wilder's skill at timing and emotional accuracy made the opposite happen. Despite the odds, the Waco Kid turned into one of the most hilarious moments of the movie. Behind this character, though, was an actor with more than mere comic timing. He bore the heart of the film. Waco Kid was not merely a drunk comedian. He was a fallen legend, the fastest gun in the West, now drained by booze, isolation, and the weight of violence. Wilder added subtlety to the role with gestures that suggested trauma, shaking hands, deep sighs, a smirk that struggled to conceal sorrow. When he acknowledged having once been the quickest draw, his voice was devoid of pride. Rather, it was a confessional, a gut-wrenching reminder of a life that had shattered him. Why did Wilder go this route? Because he knew the funniest characters are typically the ones who hurt the most. That hidden sorrow made the humor more biting, the satire more profound, and the audience's laughter more squirm-inducing. In an era when comedy was based on over-the-top acting and volume, Wilder demonstrated that silence was an equal force. His philosophy was straightforward: don't beg for laughter. Reveal the truth, and the public will laugh. But even while Wilder grounded the film, production behind the scenes hung suspended in mid-collapse at all times. Warner Brothers, the studio financing the film, was intensely uncomfortable with its subject matter. The biting satire of racism, politics, and Hollywood itself caused immediate alarm. Executives insisted on cuts of lines, removals of slurs, and tempering of incendiary scenes. They threatened to close down the production unless edited. But Wilder refused to budge, along with Mel Brooks. Although he was neither producer nor director, he leveraged his reputation and his clout in order to defend Brooks' vision. Never, he said to the executives when they insisted on cuts. Comedy, in his view, needed to be edgy, even rude, if it was to tell the truth. Without its gritty bite, the film would be nothing more than a shallow gag reel. His quiet rebellion emboldened Brooks and withstood the pressure to keep the film's uncompromising spirit intact. Wilder didn't think laughter was only to comfort. It was a tool to reveal the hypocrisies of society, from racism to Hollywood's own corruption. Without Wilder, the film might have been defanged, but thanks to him, it kept the power that made it indelible. The studio wars weren't the only mayhem. On set, the vibe was so ridiculous that shooting frequently fell apart, not from disagreements or blunders, but from being unable to stop laughing. Wilder's flat delivery and well-placed lines were so devastatingly funny that the crew collapsed into laughter so frequently that shooting had to be interrupted. Once, it became so overwhelming that Mel Brooks had to abandon the set just so the sound wouldn't carry over into the sound recording. Finally, Brooks came up with a strange, yet ingenious solution. He distributed handkerchiefs to the crew. Whenever a person felt he was going to explode with laughter, he would have to ram a handkerchief into his mouth. When Brooks saw lots of white cloths quivering, the scene was gold. One classic moment was when the Waco Kid explained to Bart, "You have to remember that they are just simple farmers, people of the land, the common clay of the New West. You know, morons." The rhythm, the sarcastic undercurrent, the sudden cadence, it shattered Cleveland Little, it shattered the crew. And it shattered Brooks himself. None of it was done that way in the script, and yet it is one of the most memorable comedic moments in the film. Ironically, not everything of Wilder's genius ever reached audiences. Scenes probing the Waco Kid's anguish, his history, and the richness of his personality were trimmed in order to maintain the pace of the film. Were they included, the film would have had an even deeper emotional resonance, but at the expense of its relentless energy. It is one of the great what-ifs of comedy history. Despite this, Wilder defended the movie not just with his performances, but with his ideals. When executives panicked at obscenity and satire, he stood firm and refused to make concessions. When Mayhem threatened to unwind scenes, he ground them out with steady control. And when Mel Brooks needed support, Wilder was the unassuming presence who bolstered him. Amidst all this turmoil, something miraculous occurred that would gift the world another masterpiece. One afternoon, on a break on the set, Wilder casually asked Mel Brooks, "Mel, suppose that Dr. Frankenstein's grandson wanted to reject the family heritage?" Brooks dismissed it at first. He was worn out, overwhelmed by the fight over Blazing Saddles. But Wilder persisted. In secret, he started working on a script. When Brooks finally read it, he was stunned. That offhand comment was the germ of Young Frankenstein, arguably the greatest comedy in cinema history. As he had done on the set, Wilder applied restraint, understatement, and emotional realism to take something chaotic and turn it into a masterpiece. When Blazing Saddles finally opened in 1974, it wasn't merely a movie, it was a revolution. It broke the Hollywood's unspoken rules, dared to say the unsayable, and permanently transformed the function of comedy. It was not afraid of vulgarity, politics, or race. Rather, it employed them as weapons of satire. It broke the fourth wall, blended time frames, and even saw characters escaping from the set into a cinema hall within a mind-bending metasequence of all time. It influenced generations of movie directors, from Airplane, S-creators to The Simpsons and Family Guy. It showed that comedy could be something beyond entertainment. It could be an instrument, a reflection, a revolution. Gene Wilder's turn as the Waco Kid is one of the greatest comedic feats of all time, because it wasn't loud or desperate. It was quiet, haunted, and real. Even today, there is argument over whether Blazing Saddles is a work of art that transcends time or merely a product of a particular moral age. But its legacy cannot be questioned. It broke the rules, pushed the boundaries of freedom of expression, and created a debt to popular culture that never diminished. Beneath its dazzling disorder was a tale of close calls, artistic struggles, uncontrollable giggles, and a single man who, with quiet and honesty, saved and redeemed it. And the next time you watch Blazing Saddles and hear that soft opening line, "My name is Jim, but most people call me Jim," keep in mind that beneath those humble words is a tale of failure and salvation, of uprising and imagination, of a movie that took the courage to defy every convention, and of an actor who infused it with life.